Cue. Cue, Faye. Cue.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on Live with Faye. This is our daily evening conversation at 8 p.m. where we bring you all of the angles on one particular story. Remember, I have to keep reminding our viewers, this is not a debate. We're not here to pit opposite views against each other. We've brought in as many informed voices as we can on different angles on the story. The idea is to give you a perfect point of view so that you can make up your mind on what is really going on. Now, the biggest story in the country today, and the story we have to focus on for various reasons, is the encounter of Vikas Dubey. Now, Gangster Vikas Dubey, with about 62 cases against his name of attempt to murder, rioting, bribery, several other cases, came into the limelight a couple of weeks ago when, in an attempt to arrest him, 8 Uttar Pradesh police officers were gunned down. 8 officers, because someone in the police force had tipped him off. After that began a massive manhunt and several questions about the Uttar Pradesh police and why someone had tipped off Vikas Dubey and why he was so powerful. Vikas Dubey was finally arrested in Madhya Pradesh in a temple where he, oddly enough, made himself public at this temple by buying a ticket at the VIP entrance of the temple. The Madhya Pradesh police then picked him up in what seemed like the most casual arrest one had ever seen. We came to know this morning that Vikas Dubey, while being transferred from Madhya Pradesh back to Uttar Pradesh, was shot dead by the police. Now, this has opened up all of the questions we've been asking about the police for a while. This is the story that the police has put out, and you can see that visual on your screen of that overturned or tipped over car. The police say there were cows crossing the road. They attempted to avoid those cows, and they met with an accident, and the car tipped over onto its side, as you can see, at which point, apparently, allegedly, Vikas Dubey snatched a revolver from a policeman and attempted to flee. And in the action that followed, he was gunned down. Questions that arose from all of this. One is, there doesn't seem to be a divider on that road. So what did the car exactly tip over on? Secondly, the entire convoy was being followed by members of the media, by journalists, and they were actually held back at a certain point, about 10 minutes from what we understand from when this encounter took place, and then allowed, after it was done, they were allowed access to that site. There were several questions that are now being asked about why this happened. How powerful was Vikas Dubey? Was he actually, did he have information about powerful people? Is that an attempt? Is this an attempt to have silenced him? And finally, this whole idea of an encounter, and remember, one of his associates was also encountered 2 days ago. What does all of this mean? And the reason why we're bringing this up is this: as citizens, there is, and I understand, a sense of discomfort with the judiciary and the judiciary's ability to deliver justice on time. This happened also, I remember, when the accused in the Hyderabad rape case were taken out by the police early in the morning and also gunned down in a rather similar fashion. People just say, oh, why are you feeling sorry for him? It's not a question of feeling sorry for him. It's a question of mourning the law and order situation. This murder cannot be how just was behind all of this. If criminals are gunned down, if it was, how can the police take law into their own hands in this manner? And should the judicial Singh, who is an advocate and a very strong voice on citizen rights and, as well as the law. Mr. Javed Ansari is a very senior journalist. I respect him a great deal, and he's a voice that I personally rely on. K.Ragothaman is a former CBI officer. We also have, joining us a little later in the show, Yashovardhan Azad, who's a former IPS officer, and Sharad Pradhan, who will join us from Lucknow with the sort of inside details of what was happening in this particular case. Good evening to everyone and to my audience. Remember, please feel free to support us with the super chat feature as well, and we'll take your questions through the course of this conversation. Let me start with Mr. Javed Ansari. Mr. Ansari, we were talking about the fact that the media was actually held back, during this particular encounter. You find that suspicious? Was everything about this encounter suspicious? Mr. Ansari?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, look, this was an encounter foretold. Mr. Dubey's fate was sealed. It was just a question of time, not where, but when. And there are a lot of intrigue questions which intrigue me, which remain unanswered. One, why was the media stopped just 5 minutes away from where this encounter was happening? Mr. Dubey was trapped when last seen around 6 o'clock. He was traveling in a different car. Suddenly, half an hour later, he is supposed to have jumped a car that he was traveling in, turned turtle. He manages to snatch the gun and then runs away. Mr. Dubey, we are told, had 2 rods inserted in his foot and therefore was not, and even from appearance-wise, he's not the most athletic person that you see, even in Uttar Pradesh. And therefore, for somebody as heinous as this, who's been charged with over 60 crimes, why was he not handcuffed? Why was his hands and feet not tied? They know that he has he doesn't think twice before killing people, including policemen. So therefore, why were these precautions not taken? And why was the media stopped? They say that there's suddenly a herd of cows landed up on the road, in the middle of the road. Now, apart from everything else, police in India need better script writers. This is a lame duck story which doesn't wash. This is with no prejudice to Mr. Dubey's case. Mr. Dubey deserved the severest punishment. He ought to have died, but not in this manner. He ought to have been sentenced to death after the due process of law had taken its course. And therefore, his death has not answered, has left many questions unanswered. And the biggest question on everybody's lips is that what was it what was it that the UP police wanted him? Why was it that they wanted him silenced? Perhaps he knew too much. He had a list of patrons, both in the police and in the across political parties in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and maybe in a dead Dubey is much better off than one who would be singing in jail. He could, after some time, start singing in jail, and this could end up embarrassing the police, end up embarrassing senior IAS officers, and of course senior politicians in UP.
Absolutely, and I'll come back to you, Mr. Ansari. I just want to bring in Ms. Abha Singh. Ms. Singh, there is a question, obviously, about the DIG, about the letter that was written, by the gunned down police officer that went missing. There's a lot more to this story, and every twist and turn, there's evidence of a nexus between members of the police and politics and Vikas Dubey, isn't it?
Of course, I hope I'm clear. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Faye, you're very right. And this whole thing, I was listening to Mr. Ansari, and definitely it looks like a script, because there were 3 people who were arrested from group was from Faridabad. They got Karthikeya from Faridabad, and that is what they said, that also met with an accident. The car he tried to escape and they shot him dead. Another one in Etawah, Praveen Baua Dubey, he was also in the same manner. So that is the reason that Vikas Dubey went to the temple in Madhya Pradesh, bought a ticket to prove that I am here, I am surrendering. Because once a person surrenders, as per 55A of the CRPC, it is the duty of the police to look into the safety and security of the person who has been arrested. So they have not only violated the CRPC as per the guidelines, but also in the flimsy manner in which the whole thing has been executed. Of course, it raises questions of the judiciary that why cases are delayed, why conviction is poor. But you cannot do cold-blooded murder. This was not encounter. And what is surprising that the courts have kept quiet till now. I was expecting Allahabad High Court to at least suo motu take cognizance and by evening order an inquiry, but nothing has happened till now. And when Vinay Tiwari, the inspector who is supposed to have tipped off Vikas Dubey that the team is coming to kill you or arrest you, I'm sure they were going to encounter him. That is why, as a last resort, he attacked these people and killed them. That inspector, I mean, you have just arrested him. I'm asking a question. Is he not worthy of encounter? If that is the way, did he not try to run away? So, these are the things which are going in the mind. And people are asking me on Twitter, on the social media, that even their cops are hand in glove, but you are protecting them.
Well, missing obviously the question to be asked, very simple questions where the entire story lies, is if Vikas Dubey had actually surrendered, and the visual that we saw of him casually walking with the police and getting into the car before, of course, he shouted out saying, "Main Vikas Dubey hu Kanpur ka." If someone had so willingly gone with the cops, why would he suddenly attempt to flee and snatch a gun?
That is true. That is the main issue, which you are rightly saying, that once he had surrendered, otherwise he could have disappeared to Nepal. He could have crossed the border and just left for Nepal, gone out of the country. But when he surrenders, and that is why he surrendered at a public place, that he would not be shot dead. And in Madhya Pradesh, in a temple, you could not shoot him. So it would have been good for the system that had he been got back, and we would have got to know who were because somewhere I saw a banner where it showed that his wife had contested an election on a political party's ticket, be at the local level, the panchayat level. So who were the politicians who promoted him? Who are the corporates who are using his money? Even today, people are saying that his money has been put in investment at big places. He was a mafia with 500 crores. So where is this money gone? Who are the people who protected him? We needed bigger answers because UP and Bihar, we know the type of mafia that works over there. So by killing him, you have killed all the linkages which we should have rightly known. And once a person surrenders, he should not be shot dead. That is the law. So you have violated the law of the land.
No, but I love the fact that today in 2020, we have to get a lawyer onto a conversation like this to tell us that once a person has surrendered, he should not be shot dead. I mean, the fact that this conversation even has to be had in this day and age. Mr. Ragothaman is also with us, former senior officer. Mr. Ragothaman, good evening. The question that this man was arrested, I was just looking at that visual again, if we could just put it up, of him walking with the Madhya Pradesh police. Yes. They've literally held him by the arm very gently. There's no handcuff. As you can see, there's, a person with 62 cases against him already, and then 8 policemen that he supposedly gunned down, being taken by the police in this manner, and then being allowed to snatch. I mean, if he was handcuffed, would he have been able to snatch a revolver, even if the car overturned? Is there do you suspect that it was a 2-state conspiracy, Mr. Ragothaman?
This is a open and shut case of an encounter. Why I say this? Encounter is always happening. It happens throughout India, in many states also. But any policeman doing any encounter like this will not keep any outsiders as an evidence. It is not ISI or anybody who, you see visually, they hold the gun and shot him dead and all these things. But the police will not do it because for the purpose of concealing the real fact, they will always take the accused on en route, and then they will ask him, although they will stage manage this, and he was running away, and any accused running away as per CRPC 46, the police can use And if the accused is accused of offense of murder, punishment with death or life imprisonment, he can be shot dead. That is what the 46 CRPC says. So use of force by police is allowed. But in which of the cases also it has been specified. Now he is a murderer, he has killed 8 police officers, and if he faces the judiciary inquiry, a trial, and he will be sentenced to death. So he is the person qualifying for 46 CRPC. But the police, as rightly said, Abha, the script writers of the police are very bad. They should openly say that he was escaping from our custody and we shot him dead. Why to stage manage the overturned the vehicle and he was running away with taking a pistol of another person, and then he started shooting, then self-defense. You see, under section 300, it is clearly told culpable homicide by a public servant if he is discharging his duty in the public interest, public justice. It is not a murder. That 300 section says which are the murder, which are the culpable homicide, which is not culpable homicide. So there are under provisions. The police can act. The police can act. But giving all such fake stories and foisted stories by the policeman, it's a traditional way of policeman, whether it is Tamil Nadu police or UP police or any police. They will always take the accused on en route. They will say he was jumping from that and running away and he took away the pistol or arms and he tried to shoot it, and self-defense. What they take is always a self-defense. The self-defense is also one of the exemptions given under section 300 IPC. But in this case, they can openly take under exemption 3 that he was accused of murder offenses and all these things. So he was when he was taking away, we shot him dead. Openly let them say it. Why should you? They can take the law into their hand and then protect themselves also. And instead of that, why do you give room for all such of things creating?
Well, I just want to point out this report by NDTV that talks about a petition in the Supreme Court that was filed just yesterday by someone who felt that Vikas Dubey might be killed in an encounter. The individual, apart from saying that, this is lawyer Ghanshyam Upadhyay who sought a probe of the CBI, monitored by the top court, into the killing of Dubey's aides, and the demolition of his house. He alleged that there is a possibility that the gangster might be killed in an encounter. Just one part of that question to you, Mr. Ragothaman, do you believe the CBI should be investigating this case now?
Actually, it was an open secret to everybody. When he shot dead 9 police officers, and 3 of their accomplices were shot dead, were encountered and killed. Because Dubey also was expected to be killed by police. It is not a secret, I am telling openly. And we were expecting, and I was expecting, in fact, that this man will be shot dead and by encounter, staging an encounter and all these things. And that is why the police will act upon it, and they have acted upon it. Now, it is an unnatural death, but it's a murder. But the case has to be registered under 176 Part 1A as a judicial it's a custodial death. Under the judiciary, under the police custody, he escaped and he died. So the CBI can interfere, can come only when the UP government hands over the case. In suo moto, CBI cannot come into UP case, and he cannot take this case for investigation.
No, but the Supreme Court could ask for it. Mr. Ansari, what's likely to happen now, in your opinion? The Supreme Court could take. I mean, there is a plea before the court. They could ask for the case to be transferred to the central investigating agencies. Would that make a difference in your opinion?
Look, unless the Supreme Court or the Allahabad High Court intervenes, this will become a part of history. This will get overtaken by events, and it will die a death. At least this is what the UP administration is hoping, and this is normally what has happened in the past. The only way this case can move forward is if the courts intervene. At the moment, they've given no evidence of doing so. And also, let's not forget that public opinion somehow seems to favor this kind of action. We saw this in Andhra Pradesh, and we are seeing it here. He's killed 8 policemen. He also has 60 other cases against him. He's not the most popular guy going around. He's no Robin Hood. people in his own village live in abject terror. They shut their gates whenever he's in town, whenever he's in the area. So therefore,
Good
publicly
riddance.
publicly at least, not too many people will be shedding tears for him. But as far as the rule of law is concerned, as you know, we owe it to ourselves, and the courts need to uphold the law. They need to ensure that the law is upheld and need to enforce the law. And therefore, I do hope that the courts will sooner rather than later take cognizance and act, because this sets a very dangerous precedent. Today it's Vikas Dubey, tomorrow it could be anybody else. Once police taste blood and they realize that they can get away with it and there is no accountability, who knows, they might go ahead and attempt this again. They will start acting with absolute, without any regard or fear of the law. And therefore there has to be accountability. People have to be held accountable and responsible for the actions they have taken. And the only agency that can do it are the courts.
Mr. Ansari, if we look back at the Uttar Pradesh police over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, there's actually been encounters, has actually been a route that has been taken more often than not. It's been brag value for the Uttar Pradesh government, headed by Mr. Adityanath, and by the rest of the police, that हमने इतने सारे encounters कराए, हमने इतने सारे gangsters को मारे. So this has now become sort of commonplace. It's no longer extrajudicial. It's part of the system, isn't it? Isn't that worrying, because that led to what we're talking about today?
It's extremely worrying when encounter killings, when Thokto becomes a matter of state policy, when on the floor of the House, the chief executive of the state proudly proclaims, he thumps his chest and then says, Ki Thokto, anybody who breaks the law, I've told the police Thokto, and you have my full backing. We also saw subsequently in the anti-CA stir, the chief minister gave similar orders, and the UP police, which was acting in total disregard to any kind of to the law. They took the law in their own hands. They rode roughshod over protesters, rode roughshod over the law, and nothing happened to them. I have heard tapes where senior police officials are saying that we've been told by our higher ups, go and do what you have to do, act, hammer the daylights out of people, and we will ensure that no harm comes to you. Don't be scared if the media clicks your photographs or if your images are captured on CCTV. We have your back and nothing will happen. And yes, as events have now panned out, nothing has happened. Nobody has been held accountable.
The quick question to you, Mr. Ansari, that the problem with this, and this is a question I'll take to the rest of the panel as well, the problem with this is, while it can start off with being some form of vigilante justice, or it's actually the police is not exactly vigilante, but it's the system, it's justice being delivered by the police, instant justice, let's call it. There's actually a very thin line between instant justice and that happening now to political enemies, where the police can become assassins or hitmen that basically take instructions from their higher up or their political bosses, and they can just say that, we picked up this person, he attempted to run away, we shot him. So there's no evidence, there's no being presented in court, there's no, there's no process at all. How far away do you believe we are from that? Or are we already there?
Well, we are perilously close. We are perilously close, and that's something very dangerous and very scary. And when the chief executive of your state tells the police that go and do, he gives them a carte blanche, and the police realize that they will not be held accountable, that there are no checks and balances, then something like this is bound to happen. That it happens once in a couple of months is surprising. I'm surprised that it doesn't happen every second day.
And that question, I'm going to move to Abha Singh as well. Just to read them out, Hiren Goghani, Sunil Nair talked about what happens to the plea filed before the Supreme Court before the encounter. Dips says this whole thing makes us look like a banana republic. The police is being used as hitmen. Abha Singh, do you agree with Mr. Ansari that this actually puts the entire judicial system, entire justice system into peril?
Of course, it questions the judicial system, that why people are rejoicing when police is killing criminals in encounters, because you are delaying. If you see Nirbhaya case also, the death penalty took almost 7 years to execute, and that too when Nirbhaya's mother was at the court almost every second day. So I think the Supreme Court needs to first look into its own house, put it in order. Why there are judicial delays? Why is it Tariq pe Tariq? Justice delayed is justice denied. We all have been speaking again and again. You can change boards. There was a Supreme Court judges that came out and gave a conference saying that they took a press conference saying that how boards are being manipulated. So, and also, I mean, if you think of it, 8 cops were brutally killed, and these cops know that they face the music when this type of crime happens. So they arrest him, and second day they get best of the lawyers and they go on bail. So the courts also are equally accountable for this, that why do you give bail to criminals immediately? I mean, not even 24 hours. We've debated so many issues with you, Faye, where people have got bail just like that. So then now police says our work is becoming tougher, we are bearing the brunt, so it's better we kill them. And for UP Chief Minister, at least one thing we will have to say, that he is the only honest Chief Minister I have seen in the last 20 years. So at least for once you have a Chief Minister who is honest, a politician who is honest. And crime is so bad. You have girls being raped, you have girls being kidnapped. So I am with encounter, but not in this way. You kill someone in a genuine encounter, but someone who surrendered, who is in your custody, and for, as I'm repeating it, 51 of the CRPC clearly says that you have to protect him. 51A of the CRPC, that when he's in your custody, arrested, you are supposed to look after his safety. And now you concoct a story. He runs away. I don't believe in that. But even if he ran, you should have brought him to book, brought him here, and let the case go on trial. Ajmal Kasab, the video was there to show that he was firing indiscriminately at VT station. But still, he was given a lawyer to defend himself. He was hanged, but the case went on for 7-8 years, almost 9 years. So I think this is a wrong setup, because then tomorrow you can justify the mob lynchings. People will say, because judiciary is taking so much time, because police is not taking so much any action, so we are killing people. So somewhere this type of killing should not be rejoiced, should not be justified. Law of the land, rule of law has to be followed. I mean, constitution, why is there a constitution? Why is there a law of the land? I mean, if everybody is going to become a hitman, then you don't need the courts. In fact, the biggest thing on social media was that the courts should be just closed if this is how it's going to happen.
Well, you know, I want to ask the other two panelists, if you have a rebuttal here to us. Ms. Singh is saying that encounters are okay if they're genuine. Is there, there's a very, again, a thin line between a genuine encounter, a staged encounter, and a political execution. Mr. Ansari?
Look, I guess what she's trying to say is that if there is by genuine encounter, she means if the police are attacked, if there is an encounter between a gang of dacoits or a gang of terrorists and the police, then shooting somebody dead is perhaps fine. I too agree that, you know, if there is an attack, if there is a terrorist attack and the police in retaliatory fire, the police brings down people, that's fine. But when you stage man this thing, when suddenly cows appear, when suddenly, you know, Mr. Dubey was traveling in one car, suddenly 20 minutes later, he is transported into a car which overturns. The journalists are stopped at a toll gate, and 10 minutes later they are allowed to go, and they hear that there's been a gunfight, and Mr. Dubey is dead. So a lot of questions unanswered, and the biggest thing, why was the UP police in such a hurry to kill this man, to silence him? They had him in his custody. They could have hung him out to dry. He would have spent the rest of his life rotting in jail. And, you know, but why was it? Obviously, somebody wanted him silenced. They were scared that if he speaks, he would spill the beans, and they'd have some very uncomfortable questions to answer. Not just in one political party, but in a lot of parties, in the IPS and the IS as well.
We have Mr. Yashovardhan Azad, who joins us right now, former IPS officer and Central Information Commissioner. Mr. Azad, good evening and thank you for making time for us. You heard the questions, very, very good questions that Mr. Ansari has just raised about the Uttar Pradesh police. And I want to add one of my own questions to that, of what happens to civil society if this is how things are being dealt with on the ground. Mr. Azad?
Well, it's unfortunately, this encounters a severe indictment of the system. And the civil society should raise these issues on as many platforms as possible. The first issue is that, a person who surrenders a gangster, this is a classic style of surrender. Even in Madhya Pradesh, the old dacoits in the 70s and 80s would indulge in this kind of a surrender in a blaze of publicity, who are from Bundelkhand and the Chambal ravines, because I belong to that cadre. And that's why when he surrendered like this, what happened in that short period? Did he change his mind? Now, one thing is clear, that whenever when the STF picked him up, obviously he had a lot of information to diverge. Now, did he change his mind because he was scared, or the STF got a lot of information? These are all conjectures. So, and of course, the herd of cattle and the buffaloes greeting the police team, this is again, the police can only know because all the newsmen were kept outside. But my most important point, Faye, is this, that for the last 50 years, we have been debating these kind of issues. Whether encounter serves justice? Of course not. Encounter culture is not the right thing. If you're having an encounter with terrorists who are armed and who attack the police is absolutely fine. But any encounter with a criminal within a state in internal security, as Supreme Court has ordered, has to be looked into very, very carefully. And this is one of those encounters which needs to be looked into. My second point is, Vikas Dubey's needed to be alive to help the state, to help the people. The most important part is not where he hung around for last 7 days and who sheltered and where. The most important point is there were 60 cases against this man in which many and innocent lives were lost. Number two, many and innocent lands, people who owned lands, they were grabbed. What happened to the role of the revenue officials? Why didn't they deliver justice? The other point is, who were these brethren of these policemen who were massacred on that bloodbath night on July 2, who sort of were the traitors? They needed to be exposed. And the most important thing is, when his rise in the crime hierarchy was there from the 90s, the decade of the 90s till about 2000, when this man reached the zenith of his career, killing that minister, and this support came from across the political spectrum, is something so shocking. And that is why, Faye, today, the policemen are crying for reform. The police system is itself crying for reform. But the Babu-dominated state executive says, no. व्यवस्था ऐसे ही रहेगी, तुम फूलो, पनपो, हम तुमको selective dispensation देंगे, लेकिन सब कुछ सारी व्यवस्था ठीक है. Now, my last point is that given this kind of a justice through encounters, if you don't develop institutions, then selective political dispensation will continue at the grassroots level. And at the grassroots level, at the village level, your patwari, your tahsildar, your thanedar, and all the chobdars will be under a gangster mafia or under the public representatives who will only dispense justice as per the people who have voted for them. So obviously, this leads to a brutally scarred democracy where it does not serve the people's purpose at all.
Mr. Azad, quick question again. We've had the Uttar Pradesh police, and like Mr. Ansari was talking about earlier, the Uttar Pradesh police has been sort of bragging about its encounters. The government has been bragging about its encounters. It's very, it's very likely that this one also will just go down into the history books and not become a turning point of police reform. What do you think is needed in order for this to change?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes. So my answer is very simple, that handling of a home ministry is a serious business. It does not mean dispensing arms licensing. It does not mean, giving away and giving security and sort of doing transfers on Sifarish. It needs application. It needs energy. It needs dedication. And that's why, unless you fix the broken criminal system as it is, these encounters are of no point. There can be an encounter culture. You can kill as many people as you want. But unless those cases are investigated, unless the real guilty are brought to book, that's hard job. This is like fast food. This is like hamburgers. Encounters, you're killing people. Those people, it doesn't make a difference. Now, in these 60 cases, even now I'm saying there is a time. If they want to do it, they can have an independent probe, and through the call records, they can find out who were the politicians who were colluding, who were the policemen who were colluding, who were the babus who were colluding. This is how you build a database, and then you crack the system. You can smash the mafia network, and I'll tell you something, for this, you need a very strong political will. It cannot be done just simply by a few, rockers here and there. UP administration has some of the best, finest IAS and IPS officers. If the CM takes the lead and first posts officers of merit in the districts, and CM UP has examples before him. In the Hindi belt, there have been chief ministers who have smashed the mafia and their networks. Of course, they have been kicked out in a year or so, but then they'll be remembered for long. And that is what they should do now.
Right. Opening this up to the rest of the panel as well, do you believe there is the political will to do this, or is it unlikely to happen because this is a system that sort of nurtures and cradles the politics of Uttar Pradesh, and so nobody actually wants to break it?
Faye?
Yes, Mr. Ansari, go ahead.
I agree with Mr. Azad. It can be done provided you have the political will. Now this begs the question whether the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh is the man to do it. I'm sorry to say he is not, because temperamental Mr. Yogi has other skill sets. Administering a state is not. He's the one who has started this business of Thokto. He's the one who's made Thokto a part of state policy. Thokto is no substitute for good governance, for proper policing. You impose. Let me give you an example. You can impose martial law, and the law and order in any state will be absolutely fine. But what happens after that? You're just, by Thokto, you're only treating the symptom, not the disease. He needs to think this through. He has not applied his mind. And temperamentally, I don't think he has the bandwidth to initiate the kind of reform that Mr. Azad is talking about.
Absolutely. And if we look at the NCRB data, the crime rate in Uttar Pradesh has not come down. Uttar Pradesh has not become in any way safer or crime-free, or the crime has not come down any lower. The NCRB, in fact, 2018, which is the last data that we have, shows 4,322 rapes reported, 12 a day. Uttar Pradesh topping the country in terms of the number of these crimes as well. So, Ms. Abha Singh, do you believe that the political structure in Uttar Pradesh has the will to clean this up right now, or is it part of the system?
I was listening to everyone. I was posted as Director Postal Services Uttar Pradesh from 2005 to 2008. And when I was going from Mumbai, everybody told me, leave all your jewelry, all your important expensive things here, because there is a theft every day. This is how I reached Lucknow, and I was here and there were here and there. UP has been bad. Yogi Adityanath, I would give him that little bit credit. At least what he inherited was really bad. My experience was Mayawati did good in law and order. She could control rising crime against women. Samajwadi Party had let things go haywire. There was so much crime when Samajwadi Party was there. But when I go, and I am at least thrice a year, I'm in UP, my NGO works there, run summer, I go to rural areas. He is trying to control crime. But then the political system is such that corruption is so much. And then reforms. Supreme Court when there was a PIL by Mr. Prakash Singh DG, which said that you get a police board which will transfer police officers. Let me ask you, can any sitting IPS officer have the courage to come on your channel and say, these are the problems I face? No. They will, the moment a sitting serving IPS officer raises his voice, he's going to be shunted out, he's going to be transferred. And you want an independent board to transfer them. They are at the mercy of the politicians. So till the time you don't have transfer boards, you don't have, you make the postings, their tenure 3 years, 2 years, you don't have that. So what do the police officers do? In fact, when we were talking about it, that when Vikas Dubey shot at a politician inside a police station, the cops were witnesses, and they also they turned hostile. The constable will not have courage. He's going to lose his job. He's going to be suspended. So first, you protect your own officers. How can one chief minister do anything when the whole system from down to above is so corrupt? You have politicians with criminal background. I mean, 30% of our parliamentarians have rape and murder charges against them. So, you know, and UP, Bihar, all these states, they require a concentrated approach. And I would still stay by it, that encounters are required to some extent, because somewhere he shot 8 people and he surrendered in Madhya Pradesh because he thought, I will come back and I will get bail. I will have best of the lawyers. How many people will say, we will not take cases of terrorists, we will not take cases of rapists? No, because the law says everybody should get justice. Everybody is entitled to a lawyer. So the system has to change. We can talk about it, but yes, again, I will repeat.
If rapists and terrorists, if lawyers, criminal lawyers say we are not going to take their cases, won't the court appoint a lawyer to them anyway? Because they have a right to a lawyer.
They will, of course.
Even Kasab's lawyer.
Even Ajmal Kasab. Even Ajmal Kasab was given a state lawyer.
But the thing is, public prosecutors, I mean, I'm appearing in courts, they are so ill-equipped at times, they themselves don't have the important judgments. From the battery of Iman, for Salman Khan case, when you get all these lawyers flying in from Delhi, I mean, you think a public prosecutor stands up? There'll be limited people who would even know so much about.
Okay, so let me just put that tweet up one more time, and I'll take this to the whole panel, starting with Mr. K.Ragothaman. We were talking about the state of law and order in Uttar Pradesh. You will see this tweet right now, and you can see that the Uttar Pradesh government police bragging. It basically says the Jungle Raj is a thing of the past. 103 criminals killed, 1859 injured in 5,178 police engagements over the last 2 years. And 17,000 criminals have surrendered or cancelled their own bails to go to jail. Now, Mr. K.Ragothaman, here's the thing. They're not using the word encounter anymore. They're using the word engagement. And they're actually saying criminals killed. So here is a platform that has been set. A foundation has been placed for this morning's action, where basically the police has normalized this sort of behavior.
Yeah, you're correct. Absolutely. The statistics speaks like that. What is the police engagement? Engaging a police means encounter. Encounter. It is a open. See, let us not, as Abbas rightly told, the police, while in service, they have to obey the masters, and there is no question of going against them. If they go against it, then they will be changed. And Mr. Azad, participant is also talking about it. As long as we have a democratic system, we see that everything goes according to law. But the rulers are nothing but the Britishers and the former kings. And they are in the garb of politicians. And rightly told, there are many 30% of the politicians and the MPs are criminal background. And the Supreme Court has come up with various ideas, various suggestions. National Police Commission has come up with the idea with various to reform this and to prevent this, all these things. But nothing happens on the field because it is not that only UP is a chief minister. It is everywhere. Every chief minister is doing it. Every chief minister is protecting the police. Why? Because the police are the nexus with the ruling politicians to settle score with the opponents. And if they antagonize against the police, and if they go against the police, and they know that they will, because they collect information about all the politicians, and they will leak it out, and they will be in jeopardy. So that's what I rightly say. But the politicians and the police, the nexus with the gangsters, these three are thriving in India under the garb of a democratic country. And this cannot be stopped by any amount of circulars or guidelines issued by that. But as rightly put it, we need a strong hand from the judiciary that any encounter death will be registered under Section 302, murder. And the concerned police officers have to be hauled up. There is no question of any public servant safety or anything. Let the investigation be done. And if he is innocent, if he has not done it, let him say. But as long as there is no 302 against custodial death, in any case, the police will continue to do it. I am citing it in the Santakulam case, that recently in Tamil Nadu, two businessmen, honorary businessmen, were taken to custody for violating the lockdown condition. And they were done to death. And it has become a worldwide. So the police never changes its method of functioning. They are not, the moment they put on the uniform, they become inhuman. And they don't have any humanity at all. And but how to correct it? It is only the superior officers have to pull up, but the lower officers, why did you do like that? They don't have the courage to pull it up. And the politicians are in line with the gangsters. And if any honest policeman goes to them and immediately pressure comes, you don't arrest him, you leave him and all these things. This is what happening in India, and it will happen in India, any amount of these things. Under the garb of democratic system, we innocent people suffer. And we, the middle class and lower strata who doesn't have a power and money, and these two people are the victims of not only this police, but others also.
I want to also take this question to Mr. Azad. Mr. Azad, I'm curious to know your response to that tweet by the Uttar Pradesh police talking about police engagements that have killed over 103 people. What's your response to that?
Before that, let me sort of give a word of caution. You know, India is not a dacoit state. It's not ruled by gangsters. To say that every policeman behaves in the same manner is a little, very respectfully, I totally disagree with the earlier gentleman. You know, in the IPS cadre, there is that grain of sincerity, there is grain of leadership, there is grain of truthfulness, and they abhor anything called torture or encounter. Just to lump everyone in one category is absolutely wrong. And even in UP police, and I know it, there are outstanding officers. You know, we should talk about something specific. Here is the case of an encounter, as Mr. Javed Ansari is talking, and I'm very happy about it. And I was so happy hearing some from Abha Singh, you know, the issues which are pertaining to the ground. Now, this is a particular issue you've asked me. There are 302 engagements or encounters or whatever. UP police thinks, and you know, for every chief minister, I'll tell you, this happens. Every new chief minister who thinks, he thinks that law and order can be controlled by a dandayar or a gun, which is not the truth. Even the policeman, a good policeman will tell you that law enforcement and order management is not through only gun and bullets. It's through having a tremendous system you build up. You build up these pillars of criminal justice system. I'll tell you something, Faye, is something which is very, very apparent in the States. My first point is that you can never expect a first grade result when you have a third rate infrastructure, when you have a fourth rate prosecution, when you have a second rate forensics, when you have an outdated policing, when you have an 1861 Act, when you have IAS officers and babus, the antiquated, who head the prosecution system in a particular district, who don't even care a damn about a particular acquittal as to what is going to make a difference. But today, in 21st century UP, do you know that the DMs are fighting with SPs over supervision of transfer of thanedars? You know, what are we talking about? These are basic issues we should look into. 302 encounters, has it, the important thing to look into is that has this this body of encounters which you're talking about led to any improvement in the system? Are we getting more conviction rate? Are we getting more, investigation success in house breakings? Are we getting a lowering number of crimes against women, which is our national objective? These are the issues we should look into. So otherwise, it will be just glossing over if we say, ye thanedar hai, ye to waisa hi rahega. Oh, ye to police wala hai, waisa hi rahega. No, that's not the fact. Today, the police has done a wonderful job in COVID times. In Delhi today, people are swearing by police. Javed, Ansari and I live in Delhi and we have seen the brilliant work they have done. So if you condemn, that's not the way. If you just praise them, that's not the way. You have to do hard work. And that is what is missing from the state. We need application. I'm saying that there have been examples of excellent policing and smashing of mafia. It happened in Bihar for some time. Of course, the chief minister was kicked out. That's a different thing. So it's possible, it can be done.
All right, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank my panel for being so generous with your time. Thank you for coming in and having this conversation for us. So obviously, as civil society, there are people who are writing and saying, is there anything we can do at individual level? We need to keep this in the limelight. So continue to talk about it, continue to ask questions, continue to demand an investigation, because it is our right as citizens to have access to information of what happened. It is our right to know how this played out. It is our right to demand an investigation. The moment we take the limelight off this case, the file will quietly disappear into the backgrounds and the dusty cupboards. And this will become, like Mr. Ansari quite rightly said, part of history, and no reform will come from it. We have to use this as an inflection point where civil society puts pressure and asks that the court take suo motu cognizance and demand an investigation. Because obviously the police is not going to investigate itself. The political leaders or the political bosses who have ordered this killing or asked for this killing are not going to want an investigation either. It is you as civil society who have to ask for that investigation. So that's what you can do really to keep this in the limelight and to make sure there is a difference. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to our panel and our audience for joining us this evening. Remember, we're here every day at 8 p.m. to bring you every angle and every informed, educated voice on a particular topic. Thanks for watching. Good night.